$1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland.
Got some crazy things going on. Welcome to another edition of Spark the Conversation. This is your host, Mark the Spark. Here we go. So in our first bit of news, we're talking about the actual possibility of shutting down the Department of Education at the federal level. So this is one of the promises that Trump made during the campaign, that he was going to shut down the Department of Education. He is trying to get through one of his appointees to head this department, and she is a person who is actually dedicated to making this happen, it seems like, or at least a complete restructuring of this department. This department has been a cash cow for years, backed by teachers' unions across the country, and has really been one of the main drivers of some radical policies that have infiltrated our education system. Like many of the organizations throughout the country, institutions, the Democratic Party, leftists have taken over many facets of this department. And besides that, it's been a cash cow. So just like a lot of bureaucracies within the federal government, they are bloated and inefficient and have wide-ranging powers. It's very interesting to see that when there are organizations that are infiltrated by the left, Democrats have no problem with them having massive amounts of power and control. But when we start to call them out on it and question it, then they start to throw out fear tactics for people on our side of the aisle trying to upend and uproot these institutions that have taken over the processes of democracy. Because we all know the bureaucracies are the opposite of democracy. They take all the power and give it to the quote unquote experts. The experts who know better for you. They will tell you what to do, just like they did during COVID, right? Which was one of the big eye openers for just regular folk like you and me to start questioning the experts and say, maybe you guys don't really know as much as you think you know. So here is Donald Trump out at making a speech and talking about the Department of Education and the possibility of getting rid of it. And you can hear the thunderous applause when he makes this statement.
Down the federal Department of Education, and we will move everything back to the states where it belongs and where they can individualize education and do it with the love for their children.
So as you can see, he knows that it's a pretty popular item, especially on our side of things. We've seen the Department of Education as an opening for a lot of these leftist activists who are trying to, trans children and teach critical race theory and get rid of our morals and values, get rid of teaching the Bible, teach them, give them inappropriate reading material to read. All these things have started at the Department of Education. So the Washington Post has a headline, Trump preps order to dismantle education department as DOJ probes data. And closing the agency would require congressional approval, so the new administration hopes to diminish it in the meantime. That's an article they posted yesterday. Trump, of course, believes that he doesn't need the approval of Congress to make this action. And again, I think it's funny that, the left, again, is so concerned that Trump might do something like this when they would have had no trouble with Joe Biden making the Department of Education bigger, creating new departments, creating new amendments, which he tried to do with an executive order, leaving the White House, or maybe even just a statement. I'm not even sure that was an executive order. But it's very interesting to see. And we're going to see that in some of these other takes that we have too, because Donald Trump is moving so quickly. He is not pulling any punches. Like I've said before, he's not playing games. He's here to make things happen. He's here to keep his promises that he made during the campaign. Trump understands that he has a mandate from the people, that they told him what they wanted in this administration, and he is out to deliver. He knows that his time is limited. Donald Trump has learned from his first term in office, and not only did he learn from his first term in office, but he had time in between to let this sit and chew on, the mistakes and shortcomings of his first administration. And he's had time to evaluate what the people wanted, which is why he won so handily in this election, that he understands the pulse of the people. And I think this is also what made him such a good businessman, is he understands the pulse of the people. I think that to be a good businessman, you need to have that as one of your traits in order to, profit from good decisions. You need to be able to keep a good handle on, supply and demand, the basics of business. And so he's finally been able to take this into government with what he learned in his first term and what he's learned in his whole life in business. And he's been able to mesh those two items better than probably any president has before him. And he's been able to mesh these two skills. And he is now able to, with the right personnel underneath him, the right advisors, as soon as all his cabinet members get confirmed, he's going to be able to move faster and harder than he did before. And he's also learned because by watching the left, by watching Joe Biden, what he got away with using executive orders. Now, I'm no fan of executive orders. I think that they've been overused for multiple presidencies, and I think that it needs to ultimately come to an end. But first, Trump needs to use the powers that the left has created and blown completely out of what they should be, executive power specifically. But it's so interesting to see them freak out when he's just using the power that they created. And they do this all the time. They are willing to blow up any standard in order to get their will. And he's just using their power, and they freak out. It's like that quote that I've quoted before. I think it was from, what was that from? A Few Good Men. Sir Thomas More, anyways. It says, "Are you willing to get rid of all the rules?" I'm not quoting specifically, but it's pretty close. "Are you willing to get rid of all the rules to chase the devil?" And the other guy says, "Yeah, I am willing to get rid of all the rules to chase the devil." And Sir Thomas More says, "Well, then what are you going to have to stand on when the devil turns on you and there's no one there behind you? There's no rules to protect you. What will you do then?" And that's the Democratic Party. They're willing to destroy all the rules to go after what they determine is the devil today, which of course will be their friend tomorrow because they don't really have any consistent guidelines. But they're willing to blow up all the rules to chase their devil, whatever their devil is today. And then when their devil, quote unquote, who of course is Donald Trump and all of us, because Donald Trump is just a representation of what the people want, at least conservatives. And, he's a representation of us. And so if he's their devil, we're their devil. And so they're willing to blow up all the rules now to suit their needs. And now when the quote unquote devil turns on them, they've got nothing there. And all they can do is complain, but they've got nothing left because they threw out the rules. So he's going to use the powers. And I think that it's important that he uses them, but ultimately there needs to be some action. And I don't know how this is going to come about. If Congress can actually legislate a more specific guideline for executive orders, or if it can come from the Supreme Court, which ultimately it probably will have to come from the Supreme Court. They are the ultimate arbiter and ruler of what the Constitution means. and what the powers laid out in the Constitution are for each branch of government, that ultimately comes from the Supreme Court. So I think that's where it's going to have to lie. But until then, I would be quite happy to see the education department leave. And Doge is the one to do it. They're melting down on the left because Elon Musk is coming in. Actually, this would be a great time to enter in the great and wonderful AOC from the People's Republic of New York, one of the representatives from the city, the metro area in New York, and just see the meltdown from these people and see their complaints and then compare it to, like, if it was something that they agreed with or something that they liked. Yeah, I think it's actually pretty funny to watch this go down. So here's a clip of AOC melting down.
This dude is probably one of the most unintelligent billionaires I have ever met or seen or witnessed. Which, you can probably even glean that from watching these people on TV. Anyways, all of that is to say is that they don't do their homework. Clearly, like, they're putting 19-year-olds in at the Treasury. This dude is not smart. And the danger in the lack of intelligence and the lack of expertise that Elon has. I mean, this guy is one of the most morally vacant, but also just least knowledgeable about these systems that we really know of. But the point is that what that means is that they're going to hit a button inevitably. They are going to hit a button and things can go silent.
So I find it so interesting that she criticizes Elon Musk's team of 19-year-olds, is what she says, when her main selling point for herself is that she's young and she's got new ideas and she's, in touch with the young people of the country, and we've got to get the old people out, kind of thing. That's her selling point. She has nothing else. She has no experience. She has no intelligence. All she has is her looks, which, ho-hum to me, but whatever. She is young. She's, supposedly in touch with these young people and got great new ideas. So that's her selling point for herself. And yet that's her first criticism of Elon Musk's team, which who even knows what the age of these people really are? And maybe it's relevant. I mean, they do need some experience to decide what is important and what is not. That's one of the, best parts about getting older and having experience is learning what is necessary to have around, what is not necessarily, and where you can cut. I just find it super ironic that basically her key selling point for herself is the first thing that she's looking to attack in Elon Musk's team working for him at Doge. So that's pretty funny to me. So we're going to talk about one of the other key components that is being defunded, and we're talking about USAID, which is United States Aid for International Development. And this department was designed to go out into the world and help underserved countries, basically doing the work of, charity in international sections of the world, other countries. And the idea, of course, is always good. Of course, the intent behind the Democrats, well, I don't even want to give them that much credit, but a lot of their ideas are interpreted to be good, just like Social Security, just like welfare, just like, free lunches in school. All these things that are government funded or charity funded always start out with a good intent, or at least they're described to have good intent. But of course, when the left takes over, and it's kind of our fault on the right for letting it go, because conservatives always have the mentality of, I just want to be left alone, right? I know that's me. I just want to be left alone. I don't want the government in my life. But guess what? The left will not stop. They never stop. That's why we call them progressives. They always want to progress. And I put that in air quotes, of course, because what they call progress, we call regress, right? It's regressive. It's destructive, but they call it progress. So we can't leave them alone. We can't let ourselves be left alone. We can't seclude ourselves and pretend that the world is going to stop revolving around us and that they're going to stop trying to find ways to infiltrate all the institutions of the country. We can't pretend that. So we have to look at these institutions and watch them and make sure that they're not being infiltrated. Make sure they're not being used as a weapon against us, a weapon for indoctrination of our kids, a weapon for taking your hard-earned money and using it to fund whatever crazy ideas that they have, coming up next. So the first one, we got Ilhan Omar, who is in support of some pretty radical things in the Middle East, which is where she comes from. She came to this country in search of wealth and fame and fortune, and she found it by working for the government, ironically enough. But yet she wants to turn us into a leftist country, which is what she escaped. She wants to bring us down to that level. It's mind-blowing to me that you can leave a country, that is in such dire shape and then come to our country and try to change it into that. I think she just doesn't see it, but she's always saying some crazy and nonsensical stuff. Here's her clip talking about saving USAID.
It is really, really a sad day in America. We are witnessing a constitutional crisis. We talked about Trump wanting to be a dictator on day one, and here we are. This is what the beginning of dictatorship looks like. When you gut the Constitution and you install yourself as the sole power, that is how dictators are made. What Trump and Elon and all of their cronies are trying to do is take away the constitutional power of Congress. We get to decide. We have the power of the purse. We get to decide where money is allocated, and it's the executive's power to make sure that that money gets to where it needs to get. When we talk about civil servants being let go, what we are talking about is not saving money. It's essentially saying they can get paid while they're home and their work doesn't get done on behalf of the American people. It is us, taxpayers, who are being ripped off. It is us, taxpayers, who are not getting the resources that we paid into. So I ask the American people, do you want people at home and getting a paycheck and not providing services to you? The answer is no. Do you want the executive making the only decisions in this country, or do you want the elected representatives that you sent to Washington making those policies?
So this clip is from Senator Andy Kim of New Jersey, and he's talking about showing up for, at the office at the USAID and having the doors closed and not being able to get in.
USAID was the first, but I can guarantee you it's not the last. And so this same playbook that they're using in terms of how they're trying to shut this down, how they're trying to prevent public servants from working and doing the work of our country, if we allow this to happen, it's going to just start to happen at other departments and agencies. So this is likely just the tip of the iceberg.
I mean, I would say he's right. It is the tip of the iceberg. And if it happens there, it is going to keep happening in other places. And you know why? Because that's what Donald Trump was elected to do. Trust in the government is at an all-time low. What do you think the answer is? More government? The left thinks that. We saw that at their DNC conference last week. They want more. They want to keep pushing. They missed the message. So guess what? Sorry, but here we go with Chuck Schumer going down the same route. And you know, the funny thing is they think that we're upset about these things being shut down. They missed the message. We're not upset. We're cheering. We are literally over here cheering, saying, yeah, shut the stuff down. We've had enough. They're taking too much of our money. They're not showing us any benefit, and they're harming a lot of the things in this government that could work better. That's why they're hiring Elon Musk. He cleaned out X. He's shown that he can make successful business. And don't even come at me with these things like they say with Donald Trump too, that they had, you know, some businesses closed down, someone bankrupt, all those kind of things. He's lost money on X. Part of business, any successful businessman, especially people in large business with department corporations or different corporations, are going to have some failures. That's just a part of being in business. But the ability to overcome or to use, different parts of the law to your benefit is the sign of success in the business world. And Donald Trump is really one of the first people who's been able to take those kind of successes in the business world and those same principles and bring them to government. And that's what we need. And he's incorporating Elon Musk's ability to do the same thing and bring that into government as well. So these are the kind of things that we need. We are cheering it on. And it's showing in Donald Trump's popularity numbers, his approval numbers, which are higher than they've ever been. And Elon Musk is doing the work of Donald Trump. He's not an elected official, but he's working underneath the power of the executive branch, which the Democratic Party continues to expand in every administration that they have in power. And then they want to complain when we use it against them. Again, I'd like to get rid of all this executive power, but you know what? Until that ability comes around, we need to use it to our advantage the best we can. Now, I'm not saying we expand it. We definitely shouldn't expand it. It's already too big. But Donald Trump's going to use what he has and make the courts stop him, which is what they did. Unfortunately, if we don't make this stuff permanent, it's going to come and bounce back again the next time the Democrats are in power, because that's what they'll do. They'll use it against us. They'll get rid of all the rules to chase their devil. But here's Chuck Schumer talking about the same thing.
Also know this is just the beginning. If Doge attacks USAID today, then you can be sure they'll move on to another target tomorrow. Who knows? Maybe it'll be the Postal Service or the IRS or even the Social Security Administration. They could be next. Or maybe our National Security Agency.
Raise your hand if you're worried about the defunding of the IRS. Anybody? Anybody over there? Nobody? Nobody cares about the defunding of the IRS, or at least the clearing out of the IRS, the clearing out of other departments. Who thinks that there's not bloat in every federal department that could be gone tomorrow and none of us would notice? I think a lot of us think that is true. There's bloat at state level, federal level, but it's so easy to hide at these higher levels of government. Chuck Schumer and these leftists are so out of touch that they believe that we actually care that these departments are going to be minimized. We are cheering it on. This is the mandate. This is the mandate. So good for him. Good for him indeed. Our next clip is from Senator John Kennedy. It's just a short clip, but he's saying, he gets it. He says, this is the mandate. This is the message from the people. And he kind of just comes out right and says what needs to be said. He says, this is what we're going to do. And we're not going to stop. He's actually agreeing. He understands so much that he's doubling down and saying, yeah, that's what we're coming for. And we're coming for the Department of Education next. And then we're going to go after the next one and the next one. It needs to be done. There needs to be a cleaning of the federal government. We've been calling for this for a long time. And if you think that the majority of Americans are going to be upset about this, then you're going down the wrong path. They're going to keep losing if they keep going down this path. And I'm here for it. He's basically saying, I don't really care, Margaret. Right? I mean, that's the phrase. Go ahead. Come on, Elon Musk. Clean it out.
To my friends who are upset, I would say with respect, call somebody who cares. They better get used to this. It's USAID today. It's going to be Department of Education tomorrow.
Yeah, so funny. I don't really care, Margaret. That's what, if he knew what that phrase was, I'm sure he would have just used that instead of what he said. I don't really care, Margaret. It's great. It's great. Perfect timing for that line to come out and be in common use right now, because that is the American people. The Democrats, the left-wing media. This is why the left-wing media is suffering, because they're trying to scare everybody. They're trying to come out with these fear tactics, and all the American people are saying, I don't really care, Margaret. Go ahead. I care about the prices on the groceries on the shelf. I care about having my freedom back. I care about not having the government cram stuff down my throat that I don't want. I care about not having my children influenced by people who are weird and creepy and want to convince my kids to do weird and creepy things for their own feel good or whatever problems they have going on in their brain. People don't want it. They don't want it. And the left is out of touch, and people on the right, the conservatives, get it. They get the message. They have received the message, and this is the mission they're on. This next clip is of Donald Trump in the Oval Office. And again, the transparent administration has press in the Oval Office while he's signing documents. And this is him talking about the good intent behind the USAID, but how it's been used as a leftist indoctrination group, and how it's been, rooted out and infiltrated, and it's got to go because it's been ruined by the left.
Term though, USAID was something that you liked in some respects.
I love the concept of it.
That's the program.
Sure, I love the concept, but they turned out to be radical left lunatics. And the concept of it is good, but it's all about the people.
And that's very true. It is all about the people. And the people have turned it for the worse and destroyed another organization with a good intention. So there you have it. That's the president's stance on it. And that's why these things are being implemented by Doge, Elon Musk, and his other departments, Department of State. And so, talking of the people that have infiltrated it, here's some of Elon Musk's comments on why the USAID has been turned rotten and why it's got to go.
As we dug into USAID, it became apparent that what we have here is not an apple with a worm in it, but we have actually just a bowl of worms. And so at the point at which you don't merely, like, if you've got an apple and it's got a worm in it, maybe you can take the worm out. But if you've got actually just a bowl of worms, it's hopeless. And USAID is a bowl of worms. Mm-hmm. There is no apple. And when there is no apple, you've just got to basically get rid of the whole thing. That is why it's got to go. It's beyond repair. So yeah,
like he said, it's beyond repair. It's rotten. And it's so funny that he uses the metaphor of an apple full of worms. He says, if there's one worm, couple worms in an apple, you can cut it out. You can save the apple. There's still some good to be had. He said, but this organization is just all worms. And it's funny because there's a meme going around now. It's a picture. It's just like the shape of the outside shell of an apple. And the whole thing is worms, including the stem is like a worm head sticking out the top. And that's the picture depicting the USAID, that it is just a bundle of worms and it can't be saved. And so it's got to be shut down. And that's why it has been shut down. And Elon Musk even said, I asked Donald Trump, I asked the president multiple times because he's my boss. He's who I answer to. When they say that Doge and Elon Musk has gotten out of control and is kind of just taking all this power, no, they're operating under the executive authority of the president. And Elon Musk has been in communicate. This isn't like the last 4 years when the president is pretty much non-existent and doesn't meet with his cabinet members and doesn't talk to anybody, give any guidance throughout the 4 years. Donald Trump has been very hands-on, but also very transparent with the people and very a good communication with all of his staffers, whether they are Senate approved or not. So and Elon Musk alludes to this, and the power for all of this comes from the Department of State as well. And here is Marco Rubio, who is talking about how the department, how the power to, have access to all these Treasury documents and systems, which everybody's freaking out about because supposedly it's top secret. Although Donald Trump, the power of the executive, can unclassify anything at any time. Ultimately, I think the left is afraid because they're going to uncover all their friends and family's jobs that have been, robbing from our system for all this time, and they don't really accomplish anything. But this is Marco Rubio, who is talking about how the power rests with him, and he is Senate confirmed, and he is legitimate in this position, and he's just basically tapped Elon Musk to make a lot of these changes, but he's in very close communication with him.
What's happening at USAID and how the affects the trip here? Well, look, my frustration with USAID goes back to my time in Congress. It's a completely unresponsive agency. It's supposed to respond to policy directives of the State Department, and it refuses to do so. So the functions of USAID, there are a lot of functions of USAID that are going to continue, that are going to be part of American foreign policy, but it has to be aligned with American foreign policy. I said very clearly during my confirmation hearing that every dollar we spend and every program we fund, that will be aligned with the national interest of the United States. And USAID has a history of sort of ignoring that and deciding that there's somehow a global charity separate from the national interest. These are taxpayer dollars. And so I'm very troubled by these reports that they've been unwilling to cooperate with people who are asking simple questions about what does this program do, who gets the money, who are our contractors, who's funded. And that sort of level of insubordination makes it impossible to conduct the sort of mature and serious review that I think foreign aid writ large should have. We're spending taxpayer money here. These are not donor dollars. These are taxpayer dollars. And we owe the American people the assurances that every dollar we are spending abroad is being spent on something that furthers our national interest. And so far, a lot of the people that work at USAID have just simply refused to cooperate.
Are you currently in charge of USAID, or are you acting?
I'm the acting director of USAID. I've delegated that authority to someone, but I stay in touch with him. And again, our goal was to go in and align our foreign aid to the national interest. But if you go to mission after mission and embassy after embassy around the world, you will often find that in many cases, USAID is involved in programs that run counter to what we're trying to do in our national strategy with that country or with that region. That cannot continue. USAID is not an independent, non-governmental entity. It is an entity that spends taxpayer dollars, and it needs to spend it, as the statute says, in alignment with the policy directives that they get from the Secretary of State, the National Security Council, and the President. And it's been 20 or 30 years where people have tried to reform it, and it refuses to reform. It refuses to cooperate. When we were in Congress, we couldn't even get answers to basic questions about programs. That will not continue. That's not going to continue.
Elon Musk is called a terrorist organization. Do you believe that?
I've articulated to you my challenges with it, and they go back to my time in Congress. Okay, we would ask them questions. Who does this program fund? Who gets the money? We won't tell you. We don't need to tell you. We're apolitical. Well, American foreign policy isn't apolitical. American foreign policy is to further the interest of the United States. If someone wants to spend apolitical dollars, they should spend private dollars, go start a charity, and you can fund anyone you want. But if you're going to spend taxpayer money, then you need to spend it in furtherance of the national interest of the United States. That's exactly what I said at my confirmation hearing. And this is not my frustration. This frustration has existed now for almost a quarter century in multiple administrations that have gone through this challenge. It's going to stop and it's going to end.
So that pretty much explains where the power for Doge comes from. And he says this has been a problem for a long time, and we're solving problems. In this current administration, we're solving the problems that nobody's been able to solve. We're moving fast. We're breaking all the systems. We're breaking the things that actually tearing down what's already been broken, what's been destroyed by the left. And if it's not needed, it's going to be rooted out. And so he says, we're done with it. We're going to solve this problem. And in case you were wondering, some of the things that USAID has been involved in that really is above and beyond what the U.S. should even be involved in other countries or even in our country. But here's a list. Carolyn Leavitt, press secretary of Donald Trump, she's explaining, got a list. She brought receipts, and she's explaining some of the things that the USAID has been spending our taxpayer dollars on. See if these are things that interest you.
Through USAID over the past several years, these are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either, and that's exactly what Elon Musk has been tasked by President Trump to do, to get the fraud, waste, and abuse out of our federal government. Thank you, guys.
So I don't know about you, but those are not things that I'm interested in spending my hard-earned money on in other countries, okay? It's like Marco Rubio said, if these are things that interest you, you go out, start a charity, and you go spend the money from your charity. Hopefully you're honest with the people you're collecting your money from, and you go spend it on these kind of crazy initiatives. Don't force, don't steal, because taxation is theft. Whether you agree with the necessity for it or not, taxation is theft. So if you want these things, you go spend the money on it. You know, it's just like I say about all these preservationist societies. They want to force business owners, landowners, property owners to fix properties or not be able to work on their own properties because it's a historical landmark, but they're not putting up the money for it. You want these type of things going on in other countries and other parts of the world, you go spend money on it. And don't make it affect me. So back in the Senate, we have some congressional hearings going on for cabinet members still. We just got word tonight that Pam Bondi has been approved by the Senate for Attorney General position, which is great. She had a great hearing and showed that she's going to be very strong in this position and is a great pick. She came out of Florida. And we also have the two that passed the committee hearings. So, and there were some questions about these two, RFK Jr and Tulsi Gabbard. So she's going to head the intelligence agency if she can get past the full Senate hearing or vote. And RFK is going to be NIH, Institute of Health, if he can get past the whole thing. They both basically came down to party line votes. Luckily, they were able to sway the people that were questionable on the Republican side of the aisle. So here's first a comment on the passing of Tulsi Gabbard.
The Intelligence Committee just voted to report Tulsi Gabbard's nomination to be the Director of National Intelligence favorably to the full United States Senate. We look forward to her confirmation and working with her to keep it.
Tom Cotton with that report after she passed the committee vote. And then here's just a little bit of the clip of the count of RFK Jr. passing committee vote in the Senate today as well.
The vote was, would the clerk please restate the vote?
Mr. Chairman, the final tally was 14 ayes, 13 nays.
The vote was 14-13. The nomination is reported favorably. We will now turn to other senators who would.
So both of these passed their committee votes. So now they go on to the full Senate vote. Hopefully that'll be tomorrow or in a couple days so that these people can all get to work. Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr., which I think will come out with some very interesting and unusual reports coming out of the NIH. But I think these things are necessary to restore trust in our medical system, restore trust in science, and get rid of some of this bureaucracy and bloat that's taken over the whole federal government. So going to the border, yesterday we talked about the New Jersey governor who is openly harboring an illegal immigrant, apparently by his own admission. And this is Tom Homan speaking to the fact that he's not afraid to go in and take this person. They're going to be coming after him. So, when Governor, I think it was Governor Murphy, right? He, out of New Jersey anyways, when he says, good luck for them coming to my house and finding this person, guess what? They have evidence that that person is there. They don't need luck. And Tom Homan's not pulling punches. Here's that clip.
Well, I think the governor's pretty foolish saying what he said, because I got note of it. Won't let it go. We'll look into it. And if he's knowingly harboring, concealing an illegal alien, that's a violation of Title 8 United States Code 1324. I would seek prosecution, or the secretary would seek prosecution. So maybe he's bluffing. If he's not, we'll deal with that. And as far as suing sanctuary cities, well, get in line, because the Trump administration is going to do that already. Sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for criminals. There's one example, right? If the young sanctuary cities in New York City, if they would have gave us over the killer of Laken Riley when he got arrested in New York City for endangering a child, he would have been in jail, and he would have never killed Laken Riley. Sanctuary cities are responsible for deaths of thousands of young children throughout my career, and we're going to sue them, we're going to hold them. And look, if he's got to go to the Supreme Court, that's what President Trump wanted to do. He will end sanctuary cities.
And he speaks to the fact that there have been thousands of people killed by the fact that dangerous illegal criminals have been allowed to come and stay in this country. And the fact that the left does not care about this, the fact that they're not sympathetic to Americans who have been affected. These are citizens that are actually deserve to be in this country, have put into this country, or their families have. And the fact that they don't care about them is just sickening, and tells the whole truth of what's really behind this, because they know that their friends and families are making tons and tons of money. Their supporters, these NGOs, non-government organizations, charities, at least they call themselves charities, who receive billions of U.S. taxpayer dollars, money that has been stolen from the American people, because taxation is theft, I'll keep saying it, and given away to places that the taxpayers don't agree with. And finally, the hen has come to roost, and people are tired of it, and it's exemplified in the popularity of Donald Trump. So there's actually a sheriff in New York now who, one of the counties of New York State, the People's Republic of New York, where I'm from, is actually coming out and saying some of these leftists, I don't know how these people get in here. Well, I do in New York, but it's just crazy. He's saying that it's not illegal for illegals to be in the United States. I don't get it, but listen to this. I know the audio is a little out of sync on this one, but that's just how the clip is.
It's not a crime for undocumented individuals to remain in the United States, according to Arizona versus United States. That's a 2012 court case. Then there's another court case, the People versus DeMarco, that says local law enforcement is not permitted to detain people without a judicial warrant. So those are some of the cases that we have to operate under.
So he refers to a couple court cases that are probably misinterpreted. I didn't dive into these, but just the fact that what he's saying, that illegal people who are here illegally aren't here illegally, and they can be here legally. It's crazy. It's hard to understand. I don't know. Maybe more will come out on this in the future, but maybe Tom Homan's got to go after this guy too. Obviously, this is another county where, just like Tom Homan said, the more that they act like this, the more they try to protect illegal, dangerous criminals who are in our country, who are not supposed to be here, the more that the less dangerous illegals are going to get caught up in this. Friends and family are going to get arrested too, because instead of the law enforcement just turning these people over to ICE, where then only that dangerous criminal would get caught up in these deportations, now these people have to go into homes. They have to go into schools and churches and these other buildings that they've, turned into non-sanctuary areas anymore. Now these people are going to get swept up in it too. And it's because of these people's policies. They think that they can protect these why they want to protect these dangerous illegal criminals to begin with is beyond me. but they think that they can protect them from being deported and sent to their home country or being locked up in Guantanamo Bay. They're just making more dangerous, and they're making it more dangerous for their brethren in law enforcement as well. It's unreal. So the last clip I have is of Donald Trump now also defunding the UNRWA, which is the United Nations Works and Relief Agency. This is a UN-funded program that is basically supposed to do the same thing as USAID, but at an international level. But again, it has been infiltrated by leftists, and it's at a bigger level. So it's even further detached from the people who are funding these things, our tax dollars that are being stolen from us because taxation is theft. And so it's either even further from our control or from democracy, which the left claims to love so much, even though they don't. And it's even further from our control and from our reach as well. And this has actually been shown to be funding terrorist organizations, to be funding indoctrination of people across the world. So it's like the Department of Education en masse. And the money, not only is the money going directly towards these terrorist organizations, it's been shown, there's video of some of these offices being visited by Hamas, Hezbollah, and other terrorist organizations. They have video of it. People, coming in and out with weapons, using it to get weapons to these terrorist organizations. It's out of control. And so Donald Trump has realized it and is signing this executive order to make it stop.
In light of numerous actions taken by a number of bodies of the United Nations, which exhibit a deep anti-American bias, we have an executive order prepared for your attention that would withdraw the United States from the UN Human Rights Council, would withdraw the United States from the UNRWA, which is a refugee organization, and would also review American involvement in UNESCO, which has also exhibited anti-American bias. More generally, the executive order calls for a review of American involvement and funding in the UN in light of the wild disparities in levels of funding among different countries that, as you've
So I've always felt that the UN has tremendous potential. It's not living up to that potential right now. It really isn't, hasn't for a long time. It has, there are great hopes for it, but it's not being well run, to be honest, and they're not doing the job. A lot of these conflicts that we're working on should be settled, or at least we should have some help in settling them. We never seem to get help. That should be the primary purpose of the UN, the United Nations. And again, it's got great potential, and based on the potential, we'll continue to go along with it, but they got to get their act together.
What would they need to do, sir, to get their act together?
Well, they got to be fair to countries that deserve fairness. They have some countries, as you know, that are outliers, that are very bad, and they're being almost preferred as countries to those that do their job and are doing a good job. And they have to really, they're going to end up losing, a lot of countries are going to end up losing their credibility like other organizations, and then they're going to be nothing.
So he makes the point too about the broader United Nations in general, that if they're not careful and they keep going down this path, the whole United Nations could be dissolved and be gone as well, because they're not doing what they promised to do. They're not living up to their oath and their mission, right? Which is to bring the peace throughout the world. And they give the microphone to some just terrible countries, China, Russia. They're some of the highest countries in power in the United Nations. And so if they're going to take their funding and spend it in this way, and they're going to start, going against their mission as much as they are. I mean, we're a big piece of the United Nations. We're a big piece of NATO. And these people are going to learn that we're the big dog and we're not playing around anymore. So great on Trump to realize these things need to be done and to take swift action to make these things go away and stop funding it, stop using our taxpayer dollars towards these crazy leftist organizations. And Ben Shapiro made the point today that he's moving so fast, that Donald Trump's moving so fast, and his different departments and appointees are moving so fast that the left is having a really hard time with keeping a consistent message, because usually they move in unison. And I think he's absolutely right. And good on Donald Trump for pushing this quickly and being so prepared and having competency and restoring meritocracy to the White House. Good on him for realizing that this needs to be done. But it is funny because the left usually is so organized and so consistent in their messaging. It's almost like, they're like a amoeba or a glob or, like a flock, right? Where they're all move in unison. Somehow they're all in one mind meld. They're all one group where they all think with one brain. It's like there's a mothership for the Democratic Party. And whatever the mothership tells the drones to do, they do, until some of them, like Elon Musk, have broken off and said, whoa. And so you see the light, somehow they break the grasp of the mothership, and they're like all of a sudden seeing the world for themselves. And they're like, whoa, this is not what I've thought all this time. What happened? Well, you just started to think for yourself, buddy. So pretty funny. And he speaks about UNRWA, UNRWA, just like he spoke about USAID, right? It had a good intent. It had a good mission, but it fell off its mission. It forgot its intent. And so now it needs to be defunded. It needs to be stopped. And, this could be, again, a negotiating tactic like Donald Trump is very good at, saying we're going to pull our funding, and it gets people to the negotiating table. But he's always open to that, right? He's willing to, like any good negotiator, you have to be willing to walk away from the table. And if you're not willing to walk away from the table, the person on the other side of the table usually will recognize that you're not serious and that you can be taken advantage of. Donald Trump says, I'm just like with the tariffs. He says, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to walk away. We don't need you. You need us. We're the big dog. And that's the key to negotiating and winning a negotiation, is knowing the power that you have and being willing to use it, flex the muscle, and make the other side comply. So in our last bit that's just coming out, fresh breaking news this evening, that Donald Trump is meeting with Netanyahu, one of the first foreign leaders, actually I believe the first foreign leader that he's meeting with in this term since he's been inaugurated. He met with some before, but this is the first one since he's president, with Netanyahu, who is the leader of Israel. And he's announced that the United States is going to take over control of Gaza. This is really, really earth-shattering news. And I think he's recognized that, look, it's too controversial for Israel to take control of Gaza. So if anybody's got to do it, Egypt isn't willing to do it. Lebanon doesn't want it, and we don't want Lebanon to take control of it anyways. None of these Middle Eastern countries want to take control of it. So if anybody has to do it, we'll go in and do it. We'll take Greenland, we'll take Gaza, and we'll take Canada, right? We'll see how this works out, but it's breaking news, and it's good to hear that. He's willing to take action on it anyways. It's better than being indecisive, and we'll see how it works out. Again, when Trump says things like this, it seems crazy, it seems earth-shattering, but it's always just step one. It's just step one in the negotiation. He's going to see how it sticks, how it lands. It's funny because he's still saying the 51st state thing about Canada negotiating about tariffs, but he's going to see how it sticks. Some of it's just derived from the leftist agenda and how they do things, where they tell a lie over and over and over again until eventually people just assume it's true because they've heard it so many times. So some of it's from that playbook, but a lot of it's just negotiating tactics. And he clearly has shown his skill in negotiating, and he's been able to take this from business into politics, which is pretty unheard of. And I think that it's working, and it's helping to make things move quickly and successfully. And it's going to help make America great again. So I thank you for joining again today. If you are a regular listener, I appreciate it. I'd appreciate if you follow or subscribe. Leave a comment if you have any tips or compliments, or of course, there's always haters out there, but whatever. I got broad shoulders, as my grandpa would have told me. And don't forget to volunteer for something meaningful and go out and spark the conversation.